Hey, everybody. Welcome to Mark Ellis Realtor Unplugged, the show where we talk about all things real estate. I am super excited about the guest that I have on the show today, Marcus Cronce. He is a force to be reckoned with, usually doing about 50 transactions a year, 10 to 15 million in real estate. This guy is a beast. He can teach your kids how to swim. He loves dogs, loves long walks on the beach. This is Marcus Cronce, everybody. Welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, man. Looking forward to doing some more of these. So.
Yeah, it's exciting. This is the first podcast we've done.
Yeah.
Normally we just do some video shooting, but
right. This is legit.
Yeah. Good to have you here, man.
Thanks.
So let's just get right into it. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and we were talking about this earlier, was the requirement to get licensed, right? So as a realtor, you have to take a 40-hour class and then pass a state test. You got to get 70% or better on the state test. So, C's are getting degrees out here.
Right.
They're giving licenses to everybody.
Yeah.
And then we get to deal with those agents
Right.
that don't have any clue what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I think should be a requirement for an agent to get licensed is they should have to know or should have to have sold or purchased a property before they get their real estate license.
Yeah.
So that way they know, the stresses that go on in a deal. They know the pain points that happen throughout a deal. They know what it's like to be sitting on the edge of your chair and waiting for an update on an appraisal.
Right.
They need to know what it's like when the appraisal goes bad and you have to come up with money out of your pocket to make the deal happen if you're a buyer. Or if you're a seller, you have to reduce the price to make it meet the appraisal. So these are just some of the things that I wanted to talk about. I just want to know what your thoughts were on that.
I mean, I like it. I just, I think we'd have a ton better agents in the industry if that was a requirement. I just don't know if we'll ever see it just due to the fact of, if you're somebody who decides to choose real estate as a career, depending on when you get in it, some of these people might not be in a position to buy. So it's like, can you enforce that? I mean, I'd love it. I think as far as the test, I think probably something that would help is I feel like when I took it, there was more trick questions than anything. And when I realized, when I got done with it, I'm like, well, a lot of this stuff isn't even really what I'm talking about or applying to my career on a daily basis. So I don't know, maybe making the test more applicable rather than, I can't even think of an example from it. I remember thinking, is this really, this is just interesting. Like some of these questions. And I remember doing the first couple deals and I'm like, well, this is way different than what I thought it was on the test. But yeah, I like the idea of it. I think, if you're an agent who has to have a transaction of your own before you get in the industry, you're going to see, the real estate side, the mortgage side, all the things that are involved, all those little things that probably a lot of these agents don't really see when they're helping other people. So I think there would be a ton of benefit and probably a lot of better quality agents in the industry, which
Absolutely
would make our jobs easier too.
Oh my gosh. We deal with them all the time. And I think obviously, when I got into the business, I had Joe, Joe Bauer kind of took me under his wing and he showed me the rental side. He showed me the investment side. He showed me obviously how to do a deal, how to list a house, how to sell a house. And he actually went with me on my first few appointments and that was so helpful. I talk to agents all the time and they're like, oh, my broker just told me, here's my desk, here's my phone, go sell real estate.
Right.
And it's like, okay, do you know what you're going to do? What's your business plan?
Right.
How are you going to make this money that you claim you want to make each year? And I think a lot of agents get into it for the wrong reason.
For sure. Yeah, I remember when I got into it, obviously I didn't buy a house for myself yet. It wasn't long after that I bought my first one, but I remember thinking I was so scared of messing something up for somebody, and I think a lot of agents get maybe focused on the money and, say the sale, and they really don't think about the deeper things. But I remember thinking, I got to ask Mark and Joe and make sure I've got all my bases covered. And I remember thinking I need to have, if before this client asks me a question, I need to already have the answer. And I think to this day, somebody might ask something where you're like, I actually don't know that and got to figure it out. But I remember anything she would ask, I was for the most part prepared and I already had that answer. And I think that went a long way. and made me feel a little bit more comfortable. I was just so nervous and I did not want to mess anything up for her. So, and I told you the story, but when we closed on that property, that was my very first sale, and somebody at the closing said, well, congrats on your first sale, Marcus. And I was like, oh no, I didn't want that to get brought up here. And she's like, wow, really? This is your first one? She's like, I never would have guessed. And then, that made me feel more comfortable. But I just think I did the right things, and you're with the right people.
Absolutely.
That's a big part of it. So people get too focused on the sale and just trying to get through it. And it's like, let's educate these people, make sure we're doing everything right that we can.
100%. And I think if you do right by the client, they'll refer you out.
Right.
90% of my business, probably 95% of my business is repeat referral business.
Mm-hmm.
And people are not going to refer me if they did not have it
For
happy or, a good experience. And so I think that's huge, being able to treat that customer like you would your own mom, your own dad, your own brother, your own sister. I always try to put myself in the client's shoes, and I know you do the same. And I think that goes a long way.
There's always a lot of eyes on our industry too. I feel like people are very quick to, call real estate agents out, or how do I want to say it? Maybe throw them under the rug. Like, I think we're easily blamed for a lot of things, but I think we're aware of that, which is why we make sure everything's so good. So.
And rightfully so, because there are agents out here that are just, it's a wild, wild west.
Right.
And they don't, they have no direction. Their broker's not giving them the help they need,
right.
or they're not taking the time to try to learn this industry as they should. Right. I think that the real estate class teaches you how to pass the state test. Yeah. That's all it does. It doesn't teach you real life scenarios. Right. It doesn't teach you about appraisals, coming in light. Doesn't teach you about bad inspections and how to navigate those. The real life stuff that you deal with on a daily basis, they don't teach you in the class.
I've also noticed in deals too that a lot of agents are very headstrong. It's almost like when they make a decision on their end, they feel like it's right. And sometimes it is, but there's been a lot of times with, say, I have a deal going with an agent that's maybe less experienced, where I've realized that, and I kindly have to explain, well, this is how it should be handled. I always try and do it nicely, because people get offended and people think that they're right all the time. Not saying I'm always right, but there's a ton of people like that. I mean, not just in real estate, but everyone wants to be right and not take the whatever constructive criticism and actually learn as they go. I think that's a big thing too.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
The name of our game is pivot.
Yep.
Whoever pivots the best is going to survive.
Right.
And things are always constantly changing. Deals are changing. Problems are coming up.
Yep.
And how you handle those problems and issues will be what separates you from the average agent.
Definitely.
And I know you always handle things, pretty good. We talk things
Likewise,
over.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a good part of it. I think one of the other things that I do love about how you run your business is I've never seen you in a situation where you're quote unquote selling, the client. I think that throughout our conversations, we're always talking about this, where you're like, hey, this scenario is going on. What would you do? Right. I want to make sure I'm doing right by my client. I want to make sure this is the right way of doing things. And I've even seen you in certain cases, pay for things, like, hey, I just want this problem to go away. I'm going to take care of it for my client so that they don't have to worry about it. You may not even tell them that you're doing that. Mm-hmm. And I do love that aspect. Tell me a little bit about that in terms of how you are treating your business and the clients that you deal with.
I mean, it's as simple as I literally tell every client, no matter how well I know you or if we just met, I mean, I always tell them I'm laid back, I'm non-pressure, and I don't feel like I sell anything. And I know that if I'm in their shoes, I don't want to be pressured with a sale or to move forward with a purchase, especially as big as a house, even depending on the price. I mean, if you're buying a $150,000 home or $450,000, I mean, likely at that point, that's a big move for you. So, I think of it if, a car dealer or somebody that's trying to sell me something calls me and is badgering me or trying to push me into something I'm not fully comfortable with, I'm probably going to back off. I don't like that at all.
Absolutely.
So, that's just kind of the vibe I get. I mean, if I've had a lot of clients too say they've worked with an agent before me. One of the biggest complaints I hear is, well, the agent that we had before, he was taking me through houses that weren't even a fit, and they were trying to talk us into it, and we realized this isn't even what I'm looking for, and we're sitting there getting pressured into a sale. And first of all, I wouldn't want that if I was on the other end. Second of all, that's like a recipe for disaster, unless you're just trying to get, some people just want one sale. But for me, I wouldn't ever want to sell somebody something and then them look back and regret it and feel that I pushed them into that.
Absolutely.
If we're at a house and it's not a fit, I'm going to tell you. If it's a fit, I'm going to tell you. I'm always going to give you the positive and the negative, and then we're going to talk through it.
100%.
And we're going to see if you're comfortable with it. So that's kind of my thought on it. There's been times where in houses, this was actually maybe 3 weeks ago, a past client, I've worked with them a couple times. We walked in, the photos looked pretty good. I knew the layout was going to be a little weird, and we got in there and, some of it wasn't even finished. It was kind of remodeled, and the price was high. Location was okay. And he's like, damn, this isn't what I thought. And I'm like, yeah, you're not buying this. Let's go. And within probably 2 minutes, we were out of there. I mean,
yeah,
like I could have talked him into it. Well, look at the floors are all new and they've updated the electrical. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, you're not buying it, and I don't want to see you in that house.
Absolutely not. And you know what? If you've done a good job in the beginning of your relationship with that customer and finding out their wants and needs and must-haves, you know what the fit is for them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what's going to check all their boxes, right?
Right.
And so, and that's where I think I pride you on doing a great job with that, is you are finding out front, like, hey, what are you looking for? What areas do you want to live in? What are your must-haves? What do you like? What do you don't like? I think you do a really good job with that. And I do commend you for that.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
I appreciate that. No, I think I've learned to, and I actually teach like people that I work with a lot of times now, depending on what they're looking for. I guess it's a little different if they're open to a lot, or, maybe their criteria of, all right, this is the exact house I want. Maybe it's a little more open. But when we get, like, let's say somebody sends me a property, hey, we think we're interested in this. I have a conversation at least once where we'll kind of talk that through, and sometimes we're able to either, I guess, sometimes eliminate a property before we even have to take the time to go do that. And I think, that saves them time. Sometimes it saves, a lot of people get frustrated, say after you look at 3 or 4 houses, a lot of people get frustrated and feel like helpless a little bit. So fine tuning even before you get to houses can be a huge help. And I think it just makes things easier. And it's almost like I'm just trying to educate the client too. These are things to look for. A lot of times I'll say the photos are nice, but I'm going to tell you what is going to be different when we get there. A lot of times I can tell that now. The kitchen's going to be more beat up. This layout at this part of the house is going to feel a little bit awkward. So if you're okay with that, I mean, obviously let's take a look and we'll do it, but just be aware of it. I'm just open.
Absolutely,
so,
man.
Yeah.
You're up front with them.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep.
I like that. What would you say is like your favorite part about doing this job, about being a realtor?
I would say, I guess first of all, I like that I can fully control my time and also accommodate other people's time, rather than being stuck in an office for 9 to 5. I think time is a huge factor to me. That's probably the most important thing to me, just being able to plan things as I want, be with clients at certain times or when they need to, just the flexibility. Like even if I have to work 60, 70 hours a week, I would rather do that than have a 40-hour week where I'm stuck in one spot.
Sure.
I also like that I end up crossing paths with people that maybe I would have never saw again. An example, there was a guy that I swam in high school with him when I was a freshman. He was a senior. And when I got into real estate, so let's see, I graduated in 2011. So I messaged him 7 years later when I was just letting people know, hey, I'm in real estate. This is what I do. So I messaged him in 2018. And I just said, hey, man, hope all is well. This is what I do, where I do it. Happy to help. I knew there was some connection there.
Sure.
And I got no response. And most of the time I get maybe, if I send out messages to 10 people, I get 2 responses. He responded 2 years later in 2020. And he said, hey, man, thanks for the message. We actually want to buy a house on the lake, and we'd love for you to help us out. Hope you've been well. and we're going to end up needing to sell the current house that we're in as well. And I ended up selling them that lake house they wanted, and then sold their property in Sterling Heights. And
yes, bro.
so like I never would have probably crossed paths with him again if I wasn't in this business. And there's been so many people that, you know, whether it was high school, college, or even before that, a friend of a friend, a family member, it's just kind of cool to see where everybody ends up and be able to help people that maybe I would have never seen again. So that's probably my favorite part.
I think we're in the best business that you ever could be in. You know, I love real estate. I love what I do, and I love solving problems.
Right.
I think my biggest strength is actually connecting people.
Yeah.
Is I know how to connect people in many different aspects of business. You know, I have people call me all the time. Hey, do you know a good mechanic?
For sure.
Hey, do you know a good this? Do you know a good that? And I just have such a large network of people that I know and trust and have done business with.
Yeah.
That people trust my recommendation.
For sure.
I hate really giving recommendations because if the person on the other end of the line doesn't do a good job, then it's kind of on you.
Yeah.
But most of the people that I recommend do a pretty good job. But I do like the networking part of this business and the connecting. You know, you're connecting people every day to something or someone, which is what I like.
Well, I found too that even if somebody asked me recently if I had a contact for, I don't remember what it was, some sort of manual labor, and I don't think I did. I'm like, I actually don't have that, but I found one very quickly through somebody else, and I think I actually knew who it was, and I felt comfortable referring it out. So that's the cool thing too. Even if you don't have an immediate response, I feel like we have access to, you know, quite a few people.
Absolutely. So, and I think when it comes to network and circles and friends and that sort of thing, I know you and I talk all the time. You know, we're usually on the phone a couple times a week talking about business, talking about personal stuff, whatever. One thing that's not a secret to anybody is I keep a pretty tight circle. Yeah. You know, if you're in my circle, you know it. You know, if you call me at 2, 3 in the morning, I got you. You know what I mean? Where are we going? What are we doing? Yeah. You know, but to that point, you know, I can probably count on one hand the people that are in that circle, and obviously you're one of them. I appreciate that. Yeah. But what I love about our relationship is when we get in a conversation with each other, whether it's business, whether it's professional or personal, whatever, we're always talking about what are we going to do next? Yeah. What's the next level, right? We're always talking about how can we better each other? How can we support each other? How can we do more business? Whatever the topic is. I know some people, when they get together with their friends, they talk about other people. Right. We've never been in that gossip type of circle. No. You know what I mean? No. Like I think that's just not a conversation I want to be in. And that's one thing that I do while we're on this podcast. Just want to thank you for, like, when we do have conversations throughout life and throughout the week, it's always a positive note. For sure. It's always, hey, what can we do to help each other? You know? And so I just wanted to definitely thank you for that, because you don't understand how valuable that is to me. Yeah, likewise. You know? Yeah, I mean, we've known each other for quite a while, but I think from, let's say, where I was at 20 years old till now, you know, when I think about people who have helped sculpt me to where I'm at, and I'm like, you're like the first name that comes to mind too, and I'm glad I'm there for you too. But man, I mean, we've had, you know, countless conversations, and it's just always productive. I mean, whether it's work, personal life, important life decisions, where we're at, what should I do in this scenario, no matter what it's about. It's just good stuff, man. It's like, you know, when you've got a good quality friend, and you know, when it's just different and positive. So I appreciate that. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Like I say, I value our friendship for sure. Yeah. When we talk about friendships, advice, things like that, I always like to ask people, you know, is there advice that you've received from someone that you kind of take to heart, or is there, you know, I guess, what's the best advice you've ever received from someone? Do you have a example of that?
That's tough. I'm sure there's a few. I mean, the first one that comes to mind, I guess, real estate related, when we were talking about investments or buying a rental, you had said if you ever have to talk yourself into a deal, it's not the right deal and you probably shouldn't do it. That always stuck with me, because there's been a lot of times where I'm sitting there, I'm like, does this really make sense? And if I'm thinking about it too deep, it's like, probably should wait. So that's the first one. But I'd have to think on a few other. I'm sure there's a number. What about you?
Oh yeah, you've called me on those deals
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
You're like, man, I really want to put this deal together. This is what the numbers are, and I'm like, dude, they don't make any sense.
yeah.
You're like, but if I do this, and
But
I'm like,
you're like,
no,
but no.
and I'm like, but no.
Close the laptop. Yeah,
I'm like, dude, this conversation's over.
yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
actually, you just talked yourself out of it. If you think about what we just talked about, and you're like, damn, you're right. So
Yeah.
it's like, but for me, let me think. If the best advice that I've ever received, well, on the last podcast, I told people it was from my dad. He said, just have fun. And that's probably the number one advice that I received. But if I had to think of a second one, I would say somebody told me a long time ago, they said, if you think the price of winning is high, wait until you get the bill from regret.
I love that.
And that to me just always stuck out. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to live by that.
Yeah.
And so that's probably something that definitely has stuck out to me.
On that, that's a good transition. On that note, I remember sitting in this office probably 4 months into my real estate career, and I had a 9 to 5 job along with it, trying to make some money. And I remember I got my first big listing opportunity, and it was a house for, let's say, 500,000. And I'm like, oh my God, like this could be the one that like breaks me into the, real estate market and my career. And I remember this lady messaged me on Facebook and said, we'd like to have you come out. And I had a past connection with them. So I'm like, this seems like a sure thing. And I was so nervous to mess up. And I didn't respond for like an hour or two. And I thought about turning it down because I was so nervous. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I just won't do it. And I'm like, what am I thinking? So I did it. And the appointment went fine. And I'm glad I did it. So I actually didn't get the listing, which was a huge bummer. I quit that 9 to 5 job because I thought I had it locked down.
Oh, no.
And they contacted me and they said, we're actually going to go with a different agent. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do? I just quit a whole ass job. And now I don't even get a $500,000 listing. But I think that lit the fire. So what ended up happening is I brought the buyer to that exact same house and they ended up purchasing it.
Oh, nice.
Which was kind of crazy because the people that bought it, they weren't even looking to move.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like it happened for a reason.
Absolutely.
And at that point, everything unraveled how it needed. I started selling. Clients were hitting me up. People, I mean, it was almost incredible to see like this actually worked out. Like
the floodgates
yeah,
opened.
like this is what I had hoped for.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I can't believe I almost turned that down. Like where would I be now? I mean, insane.
Hindsight's 2020. I'll tell you this though. One thing, don't ever be afraid. You may have a fear about something, and I get that way too, or a little anxiety about something. Don't ever let that prevent you from taking the leap forward.
Yeah.
And I remember a specific example of that. You were sitting actually in your office, and you're like, man, I'm working this job, this 9 to 5. You just graduated college. Yeah. You're like, I'm working this 9 to 5, and I'm coaching swim, and I'm doing all this, and I'm like
3 jobs at once.
Yeah, and I'm like, dude, quit those jobs and sell real estate full time. You're like, oh, you think I can? I'm like, I know you can. Like, get your ass going. And you were so scared and so nervous.
Yeah.
I think you called Joe and you called your dad.
Yeah.
You called all these people
Yeah.
and you were like, should I do it? Should I do it? And everybody's like, hell yeah. What are you waiting on?
Right.
And then you finally took that leap of faith, and it's like you haven't looked back since. You've been crushing it. And it's just so awesome to see from like where you started to now. It's just been a huge transition.
What's crazy about that is I feel like that decision almost like scarred me in a good way, that I pulled the trigger on that, was scared to do it because obviously I'm like, is this what I'm going to end up doing with my life? And I feel like from that point forward, when I made that leap of faith, I've been able to apply that to many other things in life, whereas I feel like most people out there are really hesitant to make even like a semi-big decision. A lot of people shy away with it, and then that's when you have regret.
Absolutely.
But I've been able to apply that, whether that's to like relationships, friendships, big decisions where it's like, it's just a big decision. I've got this one buddy who I'm very close with, and he's like, I commend you for you always make power moves when they're needed. And I'm like, thanks, man, because these are very difficult decisions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like that, I feel like that allowed me to kind of like implement that later in life, even if it's not about work. So,
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So final question. I always like to end it on a good note. Tell me something good. Tell me something positive. Tell me something good, something going on in your life or something you heard or a situation. Just anything good. What you got for me?
Something good.
Yeah. Just anything good.
Well, why do I feel on the spot with that question?
I don't know.
There's a lot of good, man. I
Just
don't know.
anything.
Yeah.
What's the first thing that comes to mind?
I think just life's good. I feel like work is in a good position. I feel like my friendships and family are all exactly where I need them to be. I feel like at this point in my life, I'm like in the exact spot that I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good feeling. I don't think I've ever felt that. I feel like more well-rounded and more relaxed than ever. I used to feel stressed and shit all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm stressed sometimes, but I feel in a good spot, man.
Yeah.
Like I've got the right friends, family's good, relationships good. I don't know. I'm content, very content.
When I think of the word unbothered, your picture comes up. Because you're at the biggest unbothered state of your life that I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
And it's in the best way possible, but it's like you're such an unbothered, like, you know what? If this happens, great. If it doesn't, I'm good.
And you've seen me in every phase of my life.
I've seen you in every phase. So this is the most unbothered, #unbothered Marcus Cronce that you're ever going to see.
Right.
So, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. This has been fun.
Yeah.
It's always good to talk with you. We talk every day, but it's always good to be in a setting like this and talk. So
I appreciate it. I always love the conversation, and we'll be doing it again soon, I'm sure, many times. So.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
Everybody at home that's been watching this, please follow us on all social media at Mark Ellis Realtor Unplugged. We're also anywhere that you listen to podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel. You can see us there. And until next time, be good to each other. Have a great day. Fuck off, Chris.